here with the Mental Health Coalition handle. I'm kicking off a powerful new initiative because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. We're going to give it a few more seconds until more of you have time to join. And I'm really excited because I think the story you're about to hear is not only going to be very moving, but maybe very instructive for people in all kinds of situations. The Mental Health Coalition's ambitious and groundbreaking project is called Every Day in May. So every day for the month of May, which rhymes, a different influential person will be joining this handle to open up and talk about mental health. Now, this is the brainchild of a great friend of mine and a wonderful fashion designer named Kenneth Cole. He started an MHC to unite 31 different mental health organizations, and his goal is to help destigmatize mental health in this country. When people are able to talk about it, they feel better. It makes it, it normalizes it. It makes people feel less alone. So I'm honored to be in conversation with someone named Kevin Berthia. About 15 years ago, Kevin was in a very dark place. He ended up on the Golden Gate Bridge, ready to jump. So let's see if we can talk to Kevin about this and why he got to that moment and why he's still here today and able to talk to us, which we're really grateful about. Kevin?
How you doing today?
Thank
you for having me.
It is so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for doing this and for being willing to talk openly about your experience, because we're hoping just by getting people to open up and talk that it will encourage other people to do so and to not keep it this dark secret about their emotional state. So I know that that you had a near-death experience really on the Golden Gate Bridge, as I mentioned, 15 years ago, Kevin. What got you to that point? Can you take us back to when you were so hopeless and in such a state of despair, you thought that this was the only way out?
Absolutely. I was 22 years old, and up until that point, I had not had dealt with any one of my problems. Anything that bothered me growing up, anything that any painful moment, I internalized it and act like it didn't exist. And on that day, March 11, 2005, pretty much everything that I didn't face, which was everything in my life, I was forced to face with it all in the morning, and I was overwhelmed. I had up until that point, I had done my best to keep everything to myself, done my best to just keep everything, dealing with everything. But on that particular day, I couldn't handle everything that I was dealing with.
Tell us what you were dealing with. You were a young dad and you were very overwhelmed by that. I know you were working at the for the Postal Service. Why did things feel so overwhelming? Can you take us back to that day?
I was already dealing with a lot of different emotions and dealing with a lot of different things as I was growing up. Mentally, it just was hard for me to just deal with all the things that came with being a man, and then you deal with all those emotions, and then another emotions of being a father. That was a whole nother wave of emotions that I never was prepared for, and just to feel like I was failing her. She was premature. She was born, early, and nobody ever really told us why. So just to take on accountability that it was my fault. Maybe it was, one of the arguments that me and her mom had. Maybe she got tired of hearing us argue. I mean, it was just a number of things that I was feeling, but I blamed myself for all these different things. And it was just hard for me to cope with understanding that I had this big responsibility on and a weight on my shoulders, and I just couldn't handle it.
There are so many different situations when people are suffering from emotional troubles and challenges, and I think the idea of people sharing their feelings, it's still very hard, especially for men, I think, Kevin.
Absolutely. It's necessary. I think that now more than ever, we have to realize that sharing is a part of healing. And the only reason why we able to heal from things is when we get them out.
Why do you think it's so hard for men in particular, Kevin, to talk about their feelings? Are they conditioned that they just don't want to show any weakness?
Since I mean, history. I mean, for as long as we've been men, we've been taught that strength, a form of strength, is not being vulnerable. And I think that once we believe it in our inside, we believe that we honestly believe that in order for us to be strong, we can't cry, we can't show no emotion, and it's the complete opposite. Real strength takes vulnerability. Real strength is the ability to cry, to really deal with your emotions, to talk about your emotions. That's real strength. And I think that once I learned that and once men know that, then that's when we can start turning around this corner. But until we get to that point, it's tough. Like everything that identifies a man to be a man is completely wrong.
Have you been share that with other men your age and even younger?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
what do they when you kind of convince them that it's okay to unburden yourself and to communicate when you're not feeling good and you're feeling hopeless and in a state of despair? Do they resist that initially, or are you able to get to them pretty quickly?
My story has given me the opportunity to reach men on levels that I probably would never be able to reach them. Because a lot of, even especially men in my life that know me to be one way. And then now that I've opened up and said, no, this is how I really am, it's allowed them to come out and say, well, okay, well, I'm dealing with issues too. So this story has transformed in so many different ways and helped me to reach individuals. It's not just about me and my story. It's about how it can reach people and let somebody else out there know, hey, it can and will get better.
Thanks to the compassion of a California Highway Patrolman named Sergeant Kevin Briggs, Kevin Berthia is here today. We asked him to join us so he could pick up the story from there. We're so excited to have Briggs here because if you hadn't been there the day that Kevin considered taking his own life, he wouldn't be here today. Sergeant Briggs, tell me about what you saw when you ran into Kevin or you saw him on the Golden Gate.
Right. Well, first off, he was on the sidewalk when I rolled up on my motorcycle, matched the description of what was given to me, and I was getting off of my motorcycle. He then saw me, what it looked like. He looked my direction and leaped over that rail. And he did it in such a fast and deliberate manner. I thought he was gone. I thought he just went over and that was it, 220 feet down. But I yelled something to him, and I can't remember what it was, but he actually had grabbed that rail, swung around, smacked into it, and then he landed on this little pipe that's there. And that's where he stayed. I thought he was gone. I started running up there, but then I saw his white T-shirt through the rails, the pedestrian rail that folks, are not supposed to traverse, keeps them safe. So that's where this began.
That must have been terrifying. So, Kevin, you see Sergeant Briggs approach you. What happened next?
I just something on the inside of me just told me to grab the railing. I don't know. I just instantly grabbed the railing, and because I never was there to come to talk. Once I got to that point, looked over the railing, and I got myself in that situation, in that right. I looked over the railing, was nothing going to stop me. I wasn't prepared to grab the railing or get into that situation. But it's like he distracted me. Whatever he said, it distracted me enough, and I grabbed the railing and I turned myself on his cord. But now I'm mad because my thing was to get into the water so I can get myself out of pain. I didn't expect to be on this railing, 220 feet in the air, freezing cold, and just in this situation now.
Sergeant Briggs, tell me what you said to Kevin when you saw him, really, hanging on with very little between him and the water below.
Right. There was nothing. Once he was over that rail, there's nothing there. There's 220 feet and then down. I wanted his permission. That's what I've learned through many years, is to get their permission to come up and speak with them. I want to enable him to start this off right. So I just raised my hand to show him I have nothing. And if he would allow me to call him by his first name, I was going to personalize it. I go, hey, I'm Kevin. Is it okay if I come up and chat with you for a bit? And he was screaming at me, no, you're not coming up. If you come up one step closer, I'm jumping. And this went on for some time before he actually allowed me little by little to come up and speak with him. And I kept reassuring him, I'm not going to touch you. I'm not going to grab you. And I wasn't going to. It takes a lot of courage to go over that rail. It really does. But it takes even more courage to come back over that rail. So that's what I want.
So you convinced him and you worked to gain his trust and you approached him. And how long were you able to engage and talk with Kevin? And what kinds of things did you say to him, or what kinds of questions did you ask?
So I really wanted him to talk because it's about him. And I went up, introduced myself, and I'm just Kevin. So I asked him, what has been going on? And if is willing to speak, then that's perfect because it allows him to tell me what's going on. I'm going to gather information to see what I can use out of that. But he's also venting, which is huge. We all know this. If we're allowed to vent without interruption with someone who really cares and is there wherever we're at, it can really help our mental well-being. So he wanted to talk. So I basically just listened and would say every now and again, wow, really? Man, that's tough. Not to interrupt him, but to show him I'm there actively listening. So, we spoke for well over an hour, or Kev spoke for well over an hour, and I just listened to what had been going on.
What question did you ask him, Sergeant Briggs, that opened up the conversation, that gave Kevin permission to tell you his story and some very personal things?
So I told him, I'm here for you. Nobody else. I'm just here for you. I'd like to find out what's going on, and I'm here to help you if I can. And then that kind of broke the ice a bit, and he was apprehensive. And I went into it again. I'm not going to grab you. I don't know you. I don't know what's going on. I know you're going through some very tough times, but I am here for you today. I'm going to be here as long as it takes. I want to see you come back over this rail.
Kevin, what was it about the way Sergeant Briggs, or Kevin, the other Kevin, approached you that gave you permission to share your story and that made you trust him?
Internally, I was already dealing with a lot. I was already telling myself that I hated everything about myself. And just the fact that it was just something about him, something inside of me just said, well, why do you even care? Because he never made me feel like I was stupid for being there. I mean, on the inside, I knew I had jumped over the bridge. I knew the situation I was in. I knew all these different things were going on with me and I didn't know how I was going to get out of the situation. But it's like he normalized everything. He made me feel like I it's okay. Like, just let's talk about this. I understand you he didn't say I understand you on the rail, but he made me feel like no matter what situation I was in, it was okay. And he really did his best to normalize that situation, as crazy as it might be, or me over railing, first responder cop, all these different elements that he could have tore us apart. His compassionate voice. It was something about his voice. It was something about his tone. He wasn't rushing me. Like he said, he made me feel like in my heart, I knew if I needed to be out here all night, he was going to be here.
And it was less what he said, but really more the fact that he was there and he wanted to hear your story. Do you think listening was the best gift that he was able to give you?
Absolutely. If he didn't listen to me, I wouldn't be here. Honestly, I've been heard for a lot of years up until that point, but nobody ever listened to me. And since he took the time to really, really listen to me, and I was able to get out things that I wanted to tell my biological mom, things I wanted to tell my biological dad, things I want to tell my adoptive mom, things I want to tell my adoptive dad, all the coaches, friends, family, everything that I want to tell everybody, he made me comfortable enough telling him.
And are these things you had never talked about with anybody before, Kevin?
Never. March 11, 2005 was my coming out party. That was the first time I ever talked about myself in my life.
Sergeant Briggs, I know you've saved a couple of hundred people. Sergeant Briggs, I know that there have been, about 200 people that you've been able to convince not to take their own lives and not to jump off that bridge. And I'm curious, do you have special training, first of all?
When I first started, I had no training, and it was horrible. I felt terrible. I thought maybe I'm responsible if someone jumps. But as the years progressed, I did go through, and many officers are going through this now, called CIT, Crisis Intervention Training, which is a good start. And it wasn't until years and years later when I went through the FBI Crisis Negotiators class, and that was wonderful. Um, there's a lot of training out there now. There really is, and we need the folks trained in this.
What is the cornerstone to the training, if you had to sum it up in a few sentences?
It's really about the listening, and then how do we act based on what do we hear. So I try to go by 80-20, listening 80% of the time, and then giving feedback 20% of the time. And that can change as your negotiation progresses. But I've been through a number of things, cancer and surgeries and head injuries and all these things, but I don't talk about that like with Kev, because it's about him. We need to make it about those folks, to validate and to normalize what they've been through. Because with Kev, a lot of these folks, just by being there, of course he's suicidal, but if I was talking to someone on the outside who wasn't on that bridge, if they go through all that stuff, just to say, you know what, anybody who's been through all these different things like this may be thinking about suicide. Have you been thinking about killing yourself? It gives them an out, so they're not ashamed about it.
And I'm interested in the fact that you are a cancer survivor, which I know from my husband and sister who passed away from cancer, both of them. That is can be a very, very scary and vulnerable feeling, to have to face your own mortality. Do you think that in a way, Sergeant Briggs, that made you more empathetic and made you more sensitive to other people's fears and other people's pain?
I really think so. That was testicular cancer. I was 20 years old in the Army in Germany. So I was about as far away from my family as I could get. And it's very, very scary. Yes, and it was tough. It was not easy. I went through 3 operations and then some months of chemotherapy. It opens your eyes. Boy, when you step outside looking at a pigeon or at a flower or at the blue sky, you take it in a little more.
Kevin, I know it was listening. Were there other qualities Sergeant Briggs exhibited that made you feel comfortable telling your story? I know you said his voice and obviously his manner. You can tell he's a very compassionate, caring person in this conversation alone. But was there anything else that just, I don't know, restored your faith, not only in humanity, but in yourself?
Just that, the fact that he did have compassion, the fact that he did make me feel like I wasn't an idiot. Like, at no point did he make me feel foolish for being over or railing of the Golden Gate Bridge. And everything in my head was telling me how dumb I was, how stupid I was, how everybody was going to laugh at. All these different emotions are going on with me. And he never made me feel any of those. And to be honest with you, I always say this, my head stayed down the whole time. My eyes were closed. I never knew he was a cop. I never knew he was a first responder. I never knew he was white. I never knew anything about him. All I had to go off was his voice. That's it. I didn't know anything else. And that's what was captivating about me. It was just, it was real. It was, I knew I can hear that he cared. And it was just like, I thought it was somebody I kind of knew, to be honest. I mean, I didn't really know. It took 8 years for me to realize that he was a first responder and he was a cop, because I didn't really deal with that day. But in that moment, I could have swore it was somebody I knew.
Sergeant Briggs, I'm curious, faced with so many people who are so despairing, I'm curious if this has taken a toll on you, because it must be difficult. I hope that they're mostly successful intervention, but I imagine sometimes there haven't been. And I'm curious about how difficult that is for you and how you deal with your own mental health when that happens.
It is. I have been through therapy for different things, and it's wonderful. And I was the type of person who the typical type A cop who would not go to therapy, who didn't want anything with that. You suck it up, you come back, you do the same thing the next day. But when I recognize things, and I've had heart surgeries, and I really had to mellow out and start doing some different things. And I say that because many police officers are in the same thing that I do, and we're always uptight. Until we can let ourselves go and do some things to calm down, then we run this risk of heart attack and strokes and all these other things that so many jobs out there do. It's just kind of the way it is. But we do lose some, and it's a tragedy, and they're forever burned in my head. But as I taught my own officers and as I teach now, most of the time, if we can get there, the folks will come back. They want somebody to talk and vent to. So what do we teach our officers? What do we teach first responders? So we allow those people to come back, to save face, to vent, to feel better about themselves, because it's a rebirth. And I've seen, we all have probably, officers or citizens rush up onto a building or a bridge and grab somebody and bring them back. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. For me, my theory is I want that individual to come back on their own, because I think it is so hard. I can't fix anything. I couldn't fix anything that was going on with Kev. So if he has the courage to come back over on his own, he's going to have the courage to face all those things. I ask people when I teach at colleges, when I present, wherever I am, community events, I ask folks, how many of you have had a class in active listening skills? How many? Less than 1%. An actual class in active listening skills. So we need to up that for society and officers. And I think that would really, really help.
I think everybody could use a class in active listening skills, because it sometimes feels
Yes.
like a lost art, doesn't it?
It really does. And we don't know what to say. And people will sometimes say, take for instance, if I'm talking to Kevin, I say, you know what, everything's going to be fine. That's not right. That's not right, because I don't know if everything's going to be fine. But we get nervous. We don't know what to say. So instead of having silence, we just start spewing a bunch of stuff, which we don't mean to, but we don't like silence. People don't like silence. I'm telling you, I would rather have silence, because people don't, sometimes they're just looking for somebody to be there for them, so they don't feel like they're stuffed in a corner all by themselves. So it's okay to have silence.
What words of encouragement would you recommend for someone who is so lost and feels there's no reason for their life to continue?
Take it one day at a time. Take it 1 hour at a time. Small goals. What gets you through it? Look up a crisis safety plan, and that may help you also. I really recommend those, but just take it small steps. Use the 1-800-273-TALK line to call. Use the texting line, the 741-741, what's available to you. There's counselors and crisis folk out there that can help with things. So I know it's difficult. Sometimes it might be 2 months before you can make an appointment and see a mental health professional. It is tough out there, but you have value. You are worth it. You deserve to be happy. Sometimes it just may take some time.
Kevin, you became friendly with Sergeant Briggs after he was able to convince you not to take your own life. What has your relationship been like over the years?
Oh, we're great. When I got the opportunity to meet Briggs for the first time, face to face, it was 8 years after I went to the bridge, and we're coming up on that reunion. So we've been nothing but friends. We get the opportunity to travel around, and when we get to speak and be on the same stage, it's epic, because you get to hear both sides of the story. And I tell people, together we can change a lot in this country. We can change a lot in this world, because we come from two different backgrounds, but we are, every society says we shouldn't be friends, and we're like, we literally genuinely are good friends. Like, I love this man, like not in it, just in a real way. It's just not off camera, on camera, whatever it is, genuinely we have a great relationship.
What was the thing that he did or said that made you finally decide, I'm not going to do this?
I think getting everything out. I think finally, once I got all the baggage that was weighing me down out. It was enough for me to have, enough clarity in my brain to say, well, maybe I can. And he reminded me that my daughter's birthday. I went to the bridge March 11, 2005. My daughter's first birthday was April 6th. I would have missed my daughter's birthday. I didn't even think about that. I was looking for one reason to live, and he reminded me of that because he listened to me. And I was able to take part in her first birthday. I would not have been here to take part in that if I would have just succeeded at jumping off the bridge.
How is your life today, Kevin? Obviously it was not good 15 plus years ago. How are you doing now?
I'm doing well. I've had to accept a lot of things about me that I did never want to accept, but in that I've learned so much about myself. I'm in therapy every week. I'm on medication. Things that I never thought I'd ever be able to tell myself that I'd be doing, but life is great. I'm in the process of relocating now, and I'm just accepting everything as it comes. I get the opportunity to talk to people. Just this story has given me the opportunity to reach so many different people. I have so many people that inbox me, and I'm helping so many different people and transitioning people out of their dark places. So it's great to be able to help humanity.
And what advice would you give other people watching this, both of you, since this is Mental Health Awareness Month? What kind of parting words or words of wisdom would you give people? Why don't you start, Sergeant Briggs?
So I would tell folks, there's so many of us that give, but we fail to see how we are and our families. So I want to tell those folks, because we're working, things are so expensive and it's so hard out there. Take some time for yourself. I'll be coming out with a quality of life workbook that we can do this with, to take some time for ourselves. Look at ourselves, because I had heart issues, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, until I really started looking in. We're giving. So many of us, we really need to take some time to put ourselves on top, or at least equal to what we're doing for everybody else. So take a look at yourself. How's your quality of life?
It's called self-care. That's what it's
Thank
called.
you. That's what it's about. Self-care.
And what about you, Kevin? What advice would you give people who may feel the same way you?
I think that we have to keep things in front of us. We have to accept who we are. That's big. No matter no matter what you've done, no matter what you're going through, you have to accept who you are, because the healing starts once you accept who you are. Once you accept who you are, you can figure out exactly what you need. I was running from who I was, and I never know what I needed. Once I accepted that I have this depressive disorder, that I have mental health condition, I was able to accept it, and now I'm able to get the help that I need. So whatever you're dealing with, there's help out there, there's healing, and there's recovery. You're not dealing with this alone. There's nobody on this single planet that has just one thing singly by themselves. Somebody out there struggling with what you're struggling with. You just got to open up yourself and get yourself out there. And I know you may be scared. I know you may be afraid, but take from my life, it does get better. I promise you that. I know people say that things get better. It does, it does, and it can, and it will.
Well, thank you for telling your story, Kevin, and Kevin Berthia and Sergeant Kevin Briggs. And thanks for all the great work. And Kevin, it sounds like you're paying it forward too, by sharing your story and also convincing other people that getting things off the chest and talking about things that are troubling you can be incredibly therapeutic. So I think you're both doing an incredible public service.
Thank you.
That was such a moving story, simply about the power of listening and being there for someone, even a complete stranger.